Hello, BookTube. Well, this installment of Last Week in BookTube is going to start and finish with bombshells. Shockers. But we'll have a lot of fun stuff in between, and, let's be honest, shockers can also be fun. The first one being the announcement by YouTube last week uh, that it would change the enforcement policies of its monetization rules and strip many videos on some of the biggest channels they have of monetization uh, for what looks very much like ideological reasons. So there's a basis for some YouTubers calling it censorship, even soft censorship. Uh, I think it's fascinating. I think it's troubling in a way, but also fascinating, and it's only going to continue to grow in responses and whatnot in the coming weeks. So that got my attention. That was a lot of videos that I watched. And let's see here, a non-BookTube related thing, or tangentially related, but I thought I'd bring it up as long as I've got you all here, dreading whether or not this is going to be another 10-minute, 20-minute video. Uh, is the little feature Tiny Letter, where you write a sort of a bulletin that goes out via email to people who sign up for it. I'm curious to know if any of you would be interested if I did that on book-related subjects. So authors who die, authors who get major awards, other book-related news. Uh, I'm no way to ask other than here, so I thought I'd ask. I've recently been investigating. I've recently signed up for a few of them, and I kind of like the feel of them. So I thought I'd find out whether or not any of you would be interested in that if I did it. If not, we'll always have BookTube. And on BookTube, the main theme last week, the overriding the preponderance of videos, was August wrap-ups and September TBRs. That was there was a very large number of those, and they were fascinating to see, especially since there's a tinge of melancholy. The August wrap-ups and September TBRs for most people mean goodbye to summer. And it was fun to watch how that permeated into the different videos. We had a return, one among many. I'm sure it's just this, like all installments of Last Week in BookTube. This is just stuff that I saw. I'm sure I missed a lot. But Jeremy from JerSingsandReads returned and immediately started babbling in front of the camera in such a wonderful way that it really underscored my growing opinion that unscripted videos, unedited unscripted videos, are really the way we should be doing this. If you're editing and brushing things up, who are you really doing that for? Uh, I don't think it's imaginable that anybody could look at for instance, one of the unscripted, unedited videos that he did, fighting his own perfectionist tendencies to do it, and think, oh, well, that's not as professionally pleasing. I don't think that would cross anybody's mind. So I wonder why everybody does it. But maybe that's just me. You could barely get my iPhone to behave. But anyway, it was great to see him back, and I hope for daily videos. Simon Savage from Savage Reads reached 3,000 subscribers. I firmly suspect like I've said on this channel before, I suspect that number will go to 10,000 in record time. But congratulations all the same. Max from WellDoneBooks continued his love affair with the Book of the Month Club, which is I actually, it's so startling to me in the 2016 that I find it charming. I have been a member of Book of the Month Club on and off over the decades, and have always found it rewarding. I'm of course a little bit dismayed by the direction that Book of the Month Club has taken in the last 10 years, of more following reading trends than setting them. It used to be once upon a time that Book of the Month Club was an authority on what to read, not a kind of quasi-anachronism, and not a cheerleader. There's a book on the subject that I wanted to make sure I recommended to you, as you all watch his videos. His videos, they are bound to make you want to join Book of the Month Club, and that's a good thing. There's a lot of worth there. But the book is called A Feeling for Books by Janice Radway, and it's about her time at the Book of the Month Club in days past. And it's absolutely fascinating to read. I will try to mention it in the comments field down below. It's very much worth your time as a book about books and about reading, and also about the enormous influence that Book of the Month Club has had on American reading. we had there were many book reviews and book tours last week in BookTube, but the one that stuck out for me was Yamini and Skeptical Reader, who did a book review of War and Peace, no less. And she did a really good job. I was watching it. I watched it twice, and the second time through, I was actually openly asking myself, could you do this? Could you do anything like this? Could you do a review of War and Peace? And I don't think I could. I certainly couldn't excel her, so you should all go and see it, especially if you haven't seen War and Peace, or watched it, or read it. I don't think she meant it. Her review was very strongly reactive on her part as a reader who loved the book. So I don't think she intended it as an introduction, but it works very well as that. Emma at Emmmabooks interviewed Adam Silvera, the author of More Happy Than Not, and it was just a delightful thing. He's a very winning author, and does everything right when it comes to staying connected to the fans that got him where he is. So you'll see that in the interview. It's interviews with him abound online, but hers was very good. And then there were Jen at Reading with Pugs did a video about improving your reading, improving the amount you read, and getting over reading slumps. And it was fascinating, just fascinating. Her advice for getting over reading slumps was pretty good. She knows perfectly well where I think you all know perfectly well where I stand when it comes to reading slumps. There simply isn't time for them. They're an indulgence, and so they're in a way not real. In about 5 minutes, you're going to go to the doctor for what you think is a pulled muscle in your stomach, and 20 minutes of testing later, you're going to sit down in an office with somebody who was born the year you got your master's degree, who's going to say to you, it's serious, but we're hopeful. There are things we can try. We'll try to get you some quality time. And your whole world is going to funnel in to concentrating on his tie clip. And you're not going to believe that you're hearing these words. And it's going to make a mockery of all the plans you had to read this book next week, or that book the week after that, or write a book when you retire. And that moment happens to everybody. A variation on that moment happens to everybody. Nobody has time for a reading slump. But she also gave a couple of great tips for those of you who have them anyway, even though I say you shouldn't. And one of them was very interesting. She said that one of the things that helps her is to watch BookTube videos. I can imagine that would be true. But when it came to improving your reading, and especially your reading speed, she came up with something. She mentioned something that is very true, and that a lot of you, I bet, don't realize you're doing. And that is internal vocalization, where you're reading a book and saying it to yourself in your mind. You're reading a book at the speed that you would say it out loud. I can't help but think that this mistake is exacerbated by the gigantic new popularity of audiobooks, which perforce can only be read at the speed that they can be read out loud. When, as she points out in the video, if you uncouple the vocalization of what you're reading from seeing it, your reading speed explodes. And that only gets better. When people ask me, how do you read so fast? And I say, practice. That's what I'm practicing. Getting better at that. Getting better at reading with my eyes instead of my mouth. And if you've never tried it, you should take a mental step back and look to see the extent to which you do it. You'll be horrified in some cases. And it's, like all other things, a muscle. If you work at not vocalizing what you read, you will get better at it. And if you just want, a great story and you're not all that concerned about it, then fine. And she also makes that point. Her channel is wonderful for that. It's just worked for me. It might not work for you. Don't worry about it. I love that. But if you are interested in reading faster, if you want to read more books, that's the way to do it. So it's worth a little practice and a little trial and error. And let's see here. Oh, and of course, what would last week in BookTube be if I didn't poke at the guys at Strip Cover Lit? Their channel has been so wonderful this week. But in their latest variety hour, there was a very brief aside tossed off that I cannot let stand unchallenged. I just can't do it. I thought I could. They were mentioning, Dalton Gentry was mentioning celebrities, well-known people whose deaths will personally sadden him. And one of the people he mentioned was Stan Lee, the founder and inspiring spirit of the modern age of comic books, and the guy behind the Marvel Comics Renaissance in the 60s and 70s. I'm sure you all know who Stan Lee is. He's got cameos in every Marvel movie. And Dalton mentioned just innocently that he would be sorry. He would feel sorry when Stan Lee died. And Adrian agreed with him and then said, Stan Lee has taken credit for a whole lot of other people's writing. At which Dalton nodded his head, said, well, yeah, but I'll still miss him when he dies. And I wanted to make sure that in a given week of BookTube, if you heard that flat statement, that you heard also a flat statement contradicting it. That is not true. I don't know exactly where this all started. I've been trying for years to find out where this started, and I can't quite pin it down. I know only the most disturbing thing about it, which is that it mostly comes from people whose childhoods were immeasurably enriched by the writing of Stan Lee. They seem to be the main ones who are saying, yeah, he never wrote Fantastic Four, he never wrote Spider-Man, he never wrote Doctor Strange. That was all the artists that did that, and he just took credit for it. So I thought I would make my own categorical statement. 1, Stan Lee never took credit for anyone's work but his own. 2, Stan Lee did a huge amount of work. He wrote the comics that have his name on them. No one else did. He shared ideas with his artists, but he did the writing. Now, not only is there ample evidence for that, and, Stan Lee's too much of a gentleman to point it out himself, and I don't know to what extent he's even heard about this backlash against him. I hope he hasn't. He deserves a peaceful old age. But not only is there ample evidence that he did that, there's also ample evidence that they didn't. Because Jack Kirby, for instance, one of his greatest artists, and Steve Ditko, the artist on Doctor Strange and Spider-Man when they started out, later went on to write their own comics that they drew and wrote. We have evidence of what it's like when they write comics. And to put it mildly, there's no comparison. I don't know where this came from, but it isn't true. So I wanted to make sure I clear the air, because I too will be saddened when Stan Lee dies. And there was another little controversy. This was slightly more higher brow. It was Adam at Mementomori did a video called, he has a talent for these titles, 100 Years of Crappy Magical Realism. Where in addition to praising Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude, he bashes the current iterations of magical realism as being, cheap and silly and whimsical. He doesn't name any names. That was my only frustration, is that he gives no specifics. But he got some negative reaction to it, and I wanted to bring it up mainly because I have very little patience for magical realism of any kind, but it can be done well or poorly, just like anything else. So the main thing that I wanted to bring it up for was that I get the impression, or he's actually mentioned that he's lost some subscribers for that, and that shouldn't be happening on BookTube. I've said this before, and I'm sure I'll say it again, but I wish that it would decrease and go away. You subscribe to a BookTube channel, you really like the BookTuber, you take recommendations from them, you add to your TBR because of them, and then on one video they say something you don't agree with, and you unsubscribe so that you won't hear something you don't agree with? That should be anathema to BookTube. But I doubt that he lost many subscribers, and the video is great. So if you haven't seen it, by all means watch it. And then if you disagree with it, tell him that you disagree with it and tell him why, instead of doing the subscriber equivalent of stoppering up your ears. That does nobody any good. And oh my, if I said we would be ending on a shocker, and if Adam's funny little asides about magical realism caused a tiny amount of backlash, then what words can we use to describe a video made by a booktuber called Bre Faucheux that was a rant about diversity in books? There's no way I can do it justice in a Last Week in BookTube video wandered all over the place. It made good points that will be shouted down. It made bad points that will be misconstrued. And I don't think I can do it justice at the tail end of a Last Week in BookTube video. I have seen people saying, including authors on Twitter, saying that they want to respond to condemn the points that she made in the video, but they don't want to do it directly because they don't want to direct traffic to her. They don't want her video to benefit from being seen. And I think that's the wrong approach. This is not, I think a large number of the points she makes in her video were ill-founded, ill-considered. But this was not a drunken ramble. This video had a lot of thought behind it, a lot of parsing and editing and revising of points, and also some merit. Just the merit was mishmashed in with a wandering block of sentimentality for things that weren't good. It was a bit of an ideological mess, but some of the points that it raised are very much worth raising, very much worth talking about. So I don't agree with people who think, well, let's just the video equivalent of no platforming. Let's just make sure that we talk about it without ever diverting attention back to the source video. Now, I think you should all watch it. It's parts of it are a little painful to watch, but parts of it also are genuinely thought-provoking. That's all what we're here for, right? We're here to talk about books. Even in uncomfortable ways. So, that I'm not really addressing the nuts and bolts of that because I think I would need a whole video to do it, and I don't know if any of you would be interested in that video. But watching her video, you're going to see responses to it, and you might wonder what they are. So that's the reason that I'm including the link myself, because I don't really believe in the attitude of, well, this person said something that I don't agree with, so I want to avoid anyone knowing about it. That I just want people to hear the responses. I don't want them to see the original video. That does nobody any good. But anyway, so we end Last Week in BookTube as we began, on a shocker. The first one on how to make money off videos, and the last one on a video that is a genuine bombshell, that it will have BookTube talking, and it should. So it's a little bit contentious, but there was fun stuff in the middle. and the contentiousness comes with the territory. So I'll end this now because it's another long video, and I'll see you soon, BookTube. Thank you.